Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you some book recommendations, how to diversify your fantasy reading. This is a little series that I have been doing for over a year now. So last year I also did a first edition of Asian authors. So today we're going to talk about fantasy books written by Asian authors again. But if you need more recommendations, you can check out that video from last year. I will link it down below and you will have even more recs than in this video. The whole purpose of this little video series is to give you inspiration to read fantasy books written by marginalized authors. So not just the, famous big ones written by white men. A little inspiration because I think there is some fantastic fantasy stories out there waiting for you. Let's start out with a little novella, so it is nice and easy to dip your toes in. And that would be The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Shen. This is a novella where we follow a person who works in kind of like a restaurant situation, and one day there are some bandits showing up, and because of something that happens during their visit, these people band together to go along a journey, and they're slowly starting to figure out each other's secrets. This is also a very queer novella, and it has a very fairy tale-esque writing style. It really reminds me of the Singing Hills cycle by Niveau, and this also has, as I said, a little bit of queerness going on that I thought was a great addition to the story. Now, this one feels a little bit like a prequel novella, so by the point you're like really invested in the characters, it kind of stops. However, I would really love to see more from these characters, but as far as I know, so far the author is not planning on continuing on with this story. So next up, I want to talk about two series before we continue on with some standalones, and the first one would be the Bone Witch trilogy by Rin Chupeco. In this one, we follow a young woman who, when her brother passes away fighting a monster, she is so wrecked by grief that she starts to find her magic and she brings him back to life. However, this is a magic that is frowned upon in this world, so an older bone witch shows up and kind of takes her under her wing. They do go to this place where a lot of people with magic are trained, and it's usually women. And I love that this training includes kind of martial arts and fighting as well as entertaining, so like arts like singing and all of that. And our main character at the beginning of the story is trying to navigate all of that and to find her place in all of this. While her magic is kind of frowned upon, it is also incredibly important for this world because only her magic can really fight these monsters. However, throughout the trilogy, our main character starts to unravel the secrets of this world and the magic, and also maybe turning everything on its head. The series is marketed as YA, but it reads like any fantasy story. I think all ages can enjoy this one. It does get quite dark at times for sure. And then we have the Bone Shard Daughter, so the Drowning Empire series by Andrea Stewart. In this one, we have two main perspectives that we're following. This is also a trilogy. We have one perspective of the Emperor's daughter. She has lost her memory and she is trying to learn this important bone magic for this empire. She needs to learn the magic to become the next kind of leader of her land. And then because she has lost her memories, that is very difficult for her. And we also have this smuggler we are following, and he basically helps children escape from this medical procedure that everyone needs to do, where one piece of bone is taken from everyone living in this empire, and these bone shards are used to power these creatures. So in a way, the magic comes from the people, but it is directed through the emperor. And our smuggler main character is trying to help that not all kids have to go through this because it's an incredibly dangerous procedure and not all the children survive. Now, while he's trying to do that, he witnesses how one of the islands he just has been to starts sinking. And so that's why it's called the Drowning Empire series, because something is clearly going on. And so he fishes this little creature out of the water that he calls Mephi. So we have the most adorable animal companion in this series. And while this wasn't like my favorite series of all time, I still had a very good time with it. I think for me personally, I always struggle with like villain POVs, and in this series we kind of get that as we go through the books. But yeah, it was definitely a very imaginative world, and as I said, just the best animal companion you will ever read, so I would encourage you to pick this one up. If you're interested in the Bone Witch or the Drowning Empire series, I have complete reading vlogs for both of these series, so I will link them down below if you want to hear all of my thoughts on them. Now, speaking of books where I have reading vlogs for them, my favorite book that I read last year was The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. This is such a fantastic story. It is very hard for me to describe, but it is just the best book. Like, it's basically my soul in a book. Like, I cannot imagine what could be a better story. In its heart, this is a gay love story. We are following two warriors who have to carry the corpse of a goddess through a falling empire that is literally crashing down around them. While they're doing that, they have to fight these princes who are trying to stop them from their goal. And they are also not really willing to work together, but they have to because of the stuff that is going on around them. And throughout this story, we have a little bit of love happening, but then we also have this frame story that feels a little bit more modern, of a person who gets to go to this dream theater where they basically see this play being put on, and it's so good. It's so good, this book. I really want to reread it. But yeah, if you want to hear more, I'll link my reading vlog down below. Now, changing gears a little bit, I wanted to mention A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. This is a cozy fantasy with a little bit of romance, but in my opinion, the right amount of stakes. So I think Sangu Mandana really has the gift of mixing, you know, the fantasy elements, the magic, the stakes, with the found family, the cozy, and the romance. Like, the mixture of all of these ingredients is just perfect in magical innkeeping. And this one, we are following a young witch who is a prodigy. Everyone is looking up to her magic, but she lives with her aunt, and one day she finds her aunt passed away in the garden. And because she is basically still a child, she decides to use her magic to bring her aunt back to life, which also causes her to basically lose all of her magic. So now she's grown up, she has accommodated to this life where she is not that magical prodigy anymore, and she is running the inn with her aunt. Now, the magic of the inn works in a way that only people who really need the inn will find it. So we have a very eclectic cast of characters that are currently living at the inn, and then we have another magician who joins them at the inn, and he might be able to help our main character to get her magic back. Changing gears a little bit again, we're going back to the dark fantasies because I need you to read The Poet Empress by Shen. This is a very fresh new release, so it's extra fun to read it now. And this one, we are following a young girl that lives in the countryside. Her family are farmers, but there is a big famine going on, so people are incredibly poor. Children have very low chances of surviving because there's just not enough food, and that is when our main character hears that the future emperor is looking for concubines. So she decides to go to this selection process for her village, and because of like circumstances that are happening, she actually gets chosen to enter the selection and then also gets chosen as a concubine. And the book is very much about what happens after that, as she is now in the palace with all the political intrigue and the potential power that she can now have that she has never dreamed of, but maybe also is a little bit unprepared for. I absolutely love the main character in this book because she is very smart and she is also kind of flexible. Like, for example, there is this one eunuch who offers her help in exchange for basically working for her so he can rise with her. However, she doesn't really want to work with him, but she very quickly figures out that she will need that help. So in the end, she does. And there's just so many things in this book where the main character really shows how smart she is, how emotionally intelligent as well. And this book is also about kind of like childhood trauma, about what dynasty does to children. A lot of content warnings for this one, but it is so good. And if you do like the dark political intrigue in fantasy, you need to read this one. Now, the last standalone I wanted to mention, I'm not quite sure whether it's even still a standalone or whether there is now a sequel. I think I've heard about that, but I read it as a standalone and I think you can do so too. And that would be The Chosen and the Beautiful by Niveau. This is a bit of an interesting one because it's basically a Great Gatsby retelling. However, for me personally, it always felt more of a retelling of the movie instead of the book, because when I read this book, I could picture the movie, basically scene for scene in a way. But there is a little bit of a twist to the story in this one, because Jordan Baker in this one is an Asian American woman, and so she is the main character of this retelling. And there is also magic involved in the story a lot more, and it is more about her relationship with Nick. So last year this did have a sequel. It is called Don't Sleep with the Dead, but I actually haven't read that one, and I don't know if I will. I just really enjoyed the Gatsby vibes in this retelling. It just really felt like watching the movie, but having a little bit more of a spark of magic in it. And I am just a sucker for Gatsby retellings. Niveau in general has so many interesting fantasy books, so you will definitely find something there. Last but not least, I wanted to recommend a short story collection, and this one is called 1,000 Beginnings and Endings. This short story collection collects stories inspired by East and South Asian mythology by some authors you might have heard about, like Julie Kagawa or Renee Arieh, or other authors maybe that are new to you. Now, it has been quite a few years since I have read this collection, so I definitely want to go back and re-experience some of the stories at some point, but I remember that I really liked it and that I thought the mixture of stories was very well done. So I would recommend, if you just want to dip your toes into a couple of stories, to check out this collection. And that is it for my recommendations to diversify your fantasy reading. I really hope there was something here that inspired you to pick up some fantasy books written by Asian authors. I can only recommend it. I must be honest, I love fantasy written by Asian authors, like The Dandelion Dynasty, She Who Became the Sun, Poet Empress, Spear Cuts Through Water. Like, those are like actual favorite fantasy books of all time for me. So I can't wait to explore more. If you have your own recommendations, I would love to read about it in the comments, and also leave a like. That really helps me out. And I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!